Coming up on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show.
We certainly envision the needs to be able to do back-end processing of this types of data, to connect to third-party services or processes, to bring about the kind of the integrated solutions that we're talking about. So we are already exercising that infrastructure. We're starting to use it by providing these clean maps.
There's no denying it. Robots are cool. Even more cool when you call them cyber-physical systems, which is what they are. But they're also IoT systems. And applying the thinking of IoT to robots makes them even cooler and more valuable because instead of being discrete systems, they can be integrated as a component of an IoT environment, working together with other components to deliver outcomes. In this episode of the IoT Business Show, I speak with Chris Jones of iRobot about the Roomba and its place in the IoT world.
All this and more on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show. The people, the business, and the technology of the next generation internet. This is the IoT Inc. Business Show. And now, here's your host, Bruce Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the IoT Inc. Business Show. This show is made possible by sales of my book, IoT Inc., published by McGraw-Hill, and the IoT Inc. Certified IoT Professional, or ICIP, online training and certification program. Become a certified IoT professional by completing the program's 3 courses: ICIP Technology, ICIP Business, and ICIP Strategy and Digital Transformation. Details of which can be found at www.iot-inc.com. That's www.iot-inc.com. With me today on the IoT Show is Dr. Chris Jones. Chris is Vice President of Technology at iRobot Corporation and has almost 20 years of experience in robotic research and development across academia, government, and industry. At iRobot, he's responsible for long-term technology planning and strategy. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
Sounds like you got a pretty good gig there. How'd you get it?
Well, robots are one of the most exciting places to be, so I'm very fortunate to be here at iRobot. I've been working in robotics for about 20 years. Gone through school, worked for a government research lab and some exciting outdoor robotics programs, and been at iRobot since 2005, so for about 12 years. It's been an extremely exciting place to be, watching robotics mature as an industry, and in particular, excited to see where we are today in terms of bringing robots into homes around the world.
Now, from a technology point of view, how do you see, or do you see any difference between robotics and now what's called the Internet of Things?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a convergence of technology, and it's becoming harder to tell the difference. But from a robotics perspective, we hold and in particular, if you're thinking of consumer Internet of Things, in the home, robots like the iRobot Roomba, our vacuuming robot, we hold a unique place in the home in that we're mobile. So a lot of other connected devices in the home are stationary sensors or other types of devices. We're unique in the sense that we have a platform that is both a sensor platform. We're perceiving the world to help us go about our mission of keeping the home clean. But at the same time, we're mobile. So we have sensors, but we're also mobile, and these platforms are increasingly becoming connected. So we hold a lot of things in common to other types of devices in the connected home or within the Internet of Things ecosystem. But that mobility gives us an extra kick.
Yeah, there's an extra kick, and I guess maybe it's closer to the autonomous car then, which is also an IoT device.
Yeah, that's true. There are, a number of things in common between, autonomous cars, self-driving car technology, and autonomous robots in the home. We have the additional challenge in that we have to, of course, as a consumer product, be at a price point that makes sense for an appliance device in the home. But we have a lot of the similar challenges. You're seeing the autonomous car industry really, still in a development phase and trying to figure out how to make their solutions work in all environments, all contexts that they might be presented with. We've had to solve very similar problems in the home. Mm-hmm. Our robots have to operate in homes around the world in various conditions in the home, and we have to make them very easy to use. So, things like the Roomba, there's a single clean button. You press clean, and it goes about its job of keeping the home clean. There's a lot of intelligence under the hood there, a lot of sensor processing going on, but above that, the consumer just sees a very useful, valuable device within their connected home.
Yeah, I mean, I see. You're right. The mobility aspect, I think, is extended because in most cases, it's true that an Internet of Things device or product is not mobile. But, everything you're talking about, the sensors, the computing, the onboard computing, and I'm sure we'll get into kind of the architecture and potentially what's being done not on premise, but further away. But it seems to me that it's very similar. And this term, and it's kind of an ongoing joke with the guests that I've had because some of them have been in SCADA, some of them have been, in process control, and this overarching term of Internet of Things seems to encompass them all. And I think if I squint my eyes, it encompasses robotics too. Specifically, one of the areas that got me interested originally in the Internet of Things was the area of cyber physical systems, combining the two together. And again, it seemed very similar. So this is another case, I think, right, of IoT just being an umbrella term that covers a lot of what you've been doing in the last 10, 15 years, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We are bringing a physical product that has to move and operate in the real world. So, sense and try to make sense and understand the world around it and act accordingly. While our consumer products are now becoming connected, over the past year and a half, we've been releasing connected consumer products, robots for the home. Yeah. But over the years, iRobot's been around since 1990. So we have 27 years of trying to build robots in a wide range of domains. And in one way or another, most all of those robots have been connected. Whether it's for defense or security applications, it's connected to a remote operator. Mm-hmm. We've had commercial robots that, again, are connected products that reach back to someplace within the business domain. So we've been doing connected products for many years. These days, now we have connected products in the consumer space. And as you mentioned, it's you squint your eyes and you start to see how robots in the home, even robot vacuum cleaners in the home are actually part of the Internet of Things. We've sold more than 15 million Roombas to date. Wow. So we're very quickly at a place where when you think about connected devices in the home or our market for connected devices in the home, beyond things like cell phones or smart TVs, connected robots in the home, connected vacuum cleaners in the home, like the Roomba, are in the upper echelon in terms of volume or kind of household penetration rates for connected devices. So you might not think of that off the cuff, but that is the reality on the ground.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize the 15 million install base, and of those, it sounds like a majority of them are connected. And the reason I bring it up and the reason I'm kind of sticking on this is for a couple things. One, I think for our audience, it's going to be interesting to hear your point of view technically and potentially from a business point of view also, just looking at it from a robotics angle. And secondly, you kind of touched on it, is that if you think about the Roomba as a IoT device and you think of it within connected home with other IoT devices, then it makes a lot of sense to connect it with the other parts of the connected home and the other devices, right?
Absolutely.
And so it really, and by doing that, one, it's interesting. I didn't realize that there was a 15 million unit install base, but in the home in particular right now, if we're talking consumer IoT, there's a big effort to establish a first a platform and then an ecosystem, to monetize it. And up to this point in time, it's been selling these sexy APIs and SDKs and trying to get the developers, to jump on board. And then recently with Amazon's Alexa technology and that they're providing it, they're providing it out for other companies to use, it seems like there's a gravitation toward it as being that platform and then potentially the ecosystem. But, the way you're talking about it, the iRoomba, iRobot with its Roomba product, seems like it could be there as well. Is there, maybe if you can expand or tell us what you're thinking about that and, its connectivity to a larger ecosystem and whether or not, you have any plans in those areas?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, Alexa. So we have just recently announced that Alexa integration for Roombas is coming soon in Q2 of this year. So that's a first. You might see it as the tip of the iceberg in terms of the types of things that we believe we can do within the broader connected home ecosystem. We very much see ourselves in that way as we're a robot company, but we definitely see ourselves as a valuable member of the connected home ecosystem. Yeah. And one way to think about that is that the Roombas that are being deployed today, the 900 series of the Roomba, they're connected. They clean exceptionally well. So that's, of course, kind of table stakes for a robot vacuum. We're of course, a leader in that space. But another thing that's under the hood that folks may not think about necessarily is that those robots actually have a variety of sensors on them. And in the course of doing their cleaning mission of the home, they are building a map of the home.
Absolutely.
Imagine that as a 2D blueprint of the home. That helps the Roomba know where it's cleaned, where it hasn't cleaned, so it can systematically go about cleaning the entire level of a home. It has the ability of knowing, when its battery's getting low, it knows exactly how to get back all the way through the house to the charging station, recharge, and then go back out and finish cleaning where it left off. All of that comes from that robot building this map of the home. But when you take a step back and think about the value of a map of the home, the spatial context, the spatial understanding of the home is kind of the reason I was alluding to us occupying a unique place in the home. We're a mobile platform that can move through the home, but we're also building this spatial intelligence that we believe can play a very important role in the broader connected home ecosystem. No other device out there is able to build that same type of blueprint of the home that can really serve as an enabling context to help the broader ecosystem of devices know how to work with one another.
No, I agree. And I was thinking, as you were saying it earlier, I was thinking the same thing. And, we have different blueprints, so to speak. I mean, there's going to be a security blueprint, for example, but what the Roomba provides is, like you're saying, is a three-dimensional, well, I would say even three-dimensional, maybe not, I guess unless you had a couple of them or more than one, but let's say a two-dimensional map or physical map of the home, which is what you're alluding to, but when you combine that map with a security map or with a contextual human location mapping system, there's a ton of value there. And like you said, with this map, it's very unique because most people aren't going to sit there and input or take photos. I guess the other way is maybe, some photographic device, but they're not going to sit there and input or even set up these photographic devices. But yeah. So what are you doing with that? Are you going to be leveraging that? Because you're right, it is something that's very unique.
Yeah, that's a core focus for us at this point, is continuing to develop and start to show more of the value we can provide in the connected home. And as you mentioned, while there may be other ways to build a 2D blueprint of the home, there's one other twist to all of this, and that is that a robot like the Roomba is running in homes around the world almost pretty much on a daily basis. So not only is it building that map, it will maintain it over time.
Right.
And if you combine that with, I'll give you a few kind of just examples to illustrate or some concepts that might illustrate how that could be useful in the connected home, is that you could imagine just simply taking temperature measurements from throughout the home as the robot is going about covering every square inch of the home. It's taking a temperature measurement. Mm-hmm. Now you have essentially a temperature map of your home. How much could you tell from that? Could you tell where drafts might be coming from? Can you tell where maybe you can clearly see kind of, temperature differences or HVAC inefficiencies in your home? That intelligence, that temperature information combined with spatial information has a lot of inherent value in it, especially if you're collecting that. A consumer might be able to see that on a daily basis, to be able to see how they can improve the efficiency or the comfort of their home, given that type of information. And then one other, dimension on the value or the potential ways that maps might be used, just as another simple example, is, in the kind of connected home, smart home ecosystem, as you mentioned, you can buy hubs, that have different types of connected devices. And one of the more popular kind of areas is connected lighting. Mm-hmm. The consumer can go through and set up some pretty interesting rules around, let's say using motion sensors to turn lights on and off based about how they're moving throughout the home. That gets, even though that's a fairly simple sounding activity, can get pretty complicated pretty quickly, where in effect you're asking the consumer to program their home. Right. Logically kind of program their home to say this motion sensor turns on these two lights, that motion sensor turns on these other lights, et cetera. It gets complicated fairly quickly, actually. But if you have a map of the home, if you have an understanding of where rooms are, which is what you get from a map, if the consumer can just designate where are the lights and where are the motion sensors in the home, connected lights and motion sensors in the home, you can very easily automate that whole process so that the consumer is removed from the burden of having to try to program their home. They just say, here are the devices I have, here's where they physically are. You can easily imagine a system on the back end that can automate motion activated lighting for them throughout their home without them having to touch any of that logic. So those are, a couple examples of a robot sensing temperature, day in, day out every day throughout the home, can help the consumer understand how to make better use of their HVAC system, or by having that spatial understanding where rooms are, how rooms are connected, or the layout of the home, you can automate smart home functionality in a way that is really not present today. It's not as usable today as it really could be with that understanding of space.
Yeah, and I think that's, to me anyway, that's where more the value is. The independent mapping of the home, like for example, if you were to do a temperature map, I think, it obviously has the value, but it's combining this spatial representation, as you call it, with a temperature map, whether it's from you or another, with a security map, with an occupancy map, with a lighting map. And I think it's the Venn diagram of these different maps that's going to provide a lot of value. So, all incremental value from an IoT product comes from transforming its data into useful information. This is data that we're talking about right now, spatial data. What other type of data does the Roomba collect today? And you've mentioned temperature, and what are you thinking about in the future?
Well, in the future, we're always looking for new applications for robots in and around the home. Today, we have our line of, Roomba vacuuming robots. We have a line of called Brava that are robots for hard floor care. We're like certainly interested, right? Exactly, like mops. We're certainly interested in other applications for robots in the home, and kind of as I mentioned a bit earlier, these days we are 100% focused on consumer products for robots for the home. So with that comes, a real push on our side to continue to both improve the products we have today, but are also looking at additional products in and around the home for the future. I don't have any specifics that I can reveal at this point about other types of robots in the home, but you can easily imagine, the different types of sensors that other types of robots in the home might have that's very much similar to what we are talking about. In terms of other types of data, it might be interesting to note that I mentioned, of course, the Roomba 900 series is building these maps of the home. Just earlier this month, in mid March, we pushed an update to our robots, the firmware on the robots, as well as to the mobile app that exposes that map to the consumer. So the consumer now, after every run of the robot, is able to see for themselves visually, where did that robot clean today? So you can see, oh, it did make it down the hall into both bedrooms at the end of the hall and into the entryway. And awesome, it really did clean the entire level of my home.
Right.
You're also able to see dirt detect events. So these maps, so they're called clean map reports. So after every run, the robot will provide this clean map. So you see where it's clean. You also see dirt detect. So you see places on that map where the robot detected a higher level of debris. So we have sensors in the robot. It can detect when it's really hitting a dirty spot. There's a bunch of dirt or debris on the floor in a location, and it'll spend extra time cleaning in those locations. And we show that on the map. So the consumer sees where the robot's cleaned. They're seeing data around, where were the dirtiest areas in the home over the course of that day. And then you aggregate that over time. You can start to see, where is the most heavy traffic, or where are the dirtiest parts of the home? How often have the kids left the Legos out on the floor? That you can really start to see those types of insights into the way the home works through that type of data coming from the consumer. You can see how long the robot ran over the course of that day, how many square feet it covered. So those are types of data that are coming off the robot today that is showing up for the consumer to help them understand what their robot is doing over the course of the day. In the future, there's of course a lot of sensing technology that's out there that is being brought to bear in various types of connected devices around the home. We're certainly interested and are actively looking into opportunities we might be able to bring more of those types of sensors into our products in the time ahead.
Yeah, no, and I think it's interesting for everyone listening that when you start thinking about strategy, what I promote is definitely looking at it from an outcome point of view. And I use that because you reminded me of something. One of my early clients, they actually developed mousetraps, and mostly on the commercial side, but also on the home side. And one of our products was to create a migration map of the factory floor. And in particular, one of their largest customers were commercial bakeries. Now, the Roomba is for the home anyway, it's a moving sensor array. And when you were talking about dirt, when you think about outcomes, in fact, for pest management, there's three parts. You have the dirt. The mice aren't interested in coming in the home unless there's something that's dirty. They smell it, they're interested, they come in. The second part is they can't get in the home unless the perimeter's tight. And the third part is only then do you want to catch the mice. So I guess the reason I bring this up is for everyone listening is think about the data, that Chris is talking about here, but don't just think of it in context of itself. Think of it in terms of an outcome. If the outcome, for example, and it may be a silly example in this case, but trying to catch mice in the home. Are there mice in the home? There's a couple different, one is, yeah, sure, you're going to be able to potentially see the mice, maybe. You might be able to actually see cracks in integrity in the floorboards, underneath the couch where people aren't necessarily looking, and obviously you'd be able to find the dirt. But it's just interesting that it's not always just the particular data that you're catching. It's what that data can do to achieve a certain outcome. And in all this, I think, brings me to my next question, that you're providing this map of the home, which I think is super cool. But are you now providing an API so that others, whatever that's a mousetrap company, for example, right, can use your API for their own purposes? And we talked about temperature maps, security maps, occupancy maps, lighting maps. Let's call them mice maps. But you can see it's the only way we're going to bring the technologies together are going to be, I think, to be able to add more value than their sum is to bring them together. So are you planning, or are you planning on exposing these APIs? I'm sure a lot of listeners are interested just for themselves.
Yeah, so we are certainly investing in the infrastructure to provide such an API to partners. This isn't something, our current thinking is not a public API, but we are certainly working with selected partners to provide with the full consent of the consumer to provide some of this data to perhaps another one of their connected devices in the home that could help them take better control, the consumer, to help them take better control of their connected home. So we are certainly focused on building out the right set of infrastructure that will allow us to integrate with other members of the connected home to the benefit of the consumer. We are, to give you an idea of the degree to which we see the importance of this line of work. We are one of the early and primary users of Amazon's new AWS IoT service, which they launched last year. So we have invested a lot of work and have a very fruitful partnership with Amazon to leverage their extensive backend infrastructure to support our connected products. We certainly envision the needs to be able to do back-end processing of this types of data to connect to third-party services or processes to bring about the kind of the integrated solutions that we're talking about. So we are already exercising that infrastructure. We're starting to use it by providing these clean maps that I mentioned for the consumer, where there is some back-end processing of that data between the robot and the consumer. And we are working with select partners on the back end to begin to see how can we work together to provide more integrated smart home solutions. So the short answer is yes, that is a direction of focus for us. And for folks who can see the value in this type of spatial information or sensor information from around the home, for folks who see how that could be a value to their consumer business, we'd absolutely love to talk to them. Mousetrap company, whoever it is, for folks who can see the value there, we're very interested in talking with those types of folks to see, what types of partnerships there might be within the connected home.
Excellent. No, it makes sense. Well, why don't we break down the technology a little bit for our listeners, and let's start with the main technical components of the Roomba, and maybe take us through it, kind of in how it works. I don't know, whatever way you think is the most logical way, but I think it'd be really useful just to break it down a little bit and to talk about how you approach the technology.
Sure. So, probably the easiest place to start is just with the chassis itself, the mobility aspects of the Roomba itself. So Roomba launched in 2002. So we've had, a good 15 years to really mature that approach, and we've certainly done that. There's a lot of challenges in building a robot for the home. And one of the things that's kind of a core tenet of how we think about our products and approach robotics in general is that we're very practical. So, we are looking to build a product that serves a real need for the consumer, and doing it in a way that provides, a very reliable, robust capability. So it has to work in homes around the world, day in, day out, and is cost effective. So it has to cost, has to have a cost that's commensurate with its value. So getting all three of those legs of that stool lined up is not easy. So over the years, we've certainly invested in the core mobility of the robot. Whereas today, the Roombas are very reliable, have a very solid lifetime, and are very good at kind of navigating all of the traps of the home. So whether it's traps, right? Exactly, whether it's things like, certainly they don't fall downstairs. So they have a variety of sensors that can detect and avoid, drop-offs. That's an extremely robust capability. They can deal with things like carpet tassels. So, in the early days, that was a problem where the robot would drive over, the tassels on a rug and ingest them and get stuck. Right?
Yeah.
But today, for years now, we've had the capability to detect when we're operating around carpet tassels and actively disengage ourselves from those environments. So the robot will actually, in effect, take evasive maneuvers that and free itself of that type of trap. And we have a whole slew of other technologies in the product now and in the works that will continue to improve the robot's ability to operate robustness in the home. That's a kind of a core foundation for the product. Yeah. So that's, that core chassis is the important part. Obviously, it has to clean very effectively. So we invest a lot of attention in the cleaning efficacy of the underlying cleaning solution. And, it's interesting to note that, the cleaning performance of robot vacuums is starting to approach that of upright vacuums. Like, this isn't a gadget, right? This is something that actually performs a valuable mission that helps people keep their homes clean.
Is it a function of the size of the vacuuming, I guess, of the engine, the vacuuming engine? What is it a function of? Is it are we talking about suction and then what creates suction, or are you talking about something, I guess, broader?
There's a whole slew of innovations that went into building an effective cleaning mechanism. I mean, obviously, we don't have the same power as an upright vacuum that's plugged into the wall. Right. So we're a battery powered platform that has to run for quite a long time. So there are a whole slew of tricks or a whole slew of components of the cleaning system. Maintaining suction is really not all that important. Surprisingly, there are a lot of things in terms of just keeping airflow through the system, filtration, agitation of the floor, the carpet to knock up debris, and so on. So there's a lot of specialization in core IP that we have into how do you go about effectively cleaning the floors. So that's, kind of the business end of the product. It's got to be good at cleaning, of course. And then another one, actually, in terms of just cleaning performance, is coverage. So if you can be fantastic at cleaning a carpet, but if you can't get everywhere, then you're not very effective at cleaning. So the size of the robot. So we have a lot of attention to, for example, the height of the Roomba. So it's a very sleek, kind of low form factor profile. So it gets under furniture around the home. That's one of the best places for a robot to clean, right? Get under the bed, get under the couch, get the dog hair, that's kind of accumulating under there. So keeping the robot short, right, is very, very important to get everywhere. And then also, just being able to know where you've cleaned and where you haven't cleaned. So this gets back to that mapping functionality. So make sure you're getting every nook and cranny, that you're following every edge. The Roomba will, throughout a cleaning mission, will certainly systematically cover all the areas, but it also has a special edge cleaning mode. So it'll go back and just trace every boundary, every chair leg, every wall boundary in the space to make sure it's cleaning up to the edge of all the walls and obstacles around the home. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so from a cleaning point of view, it's interesting because when you dig into, as a consultant, I get to look into different types of businesses, and when you look at it from the surface, it seems relatively simple, but when you start digging into the science behind it, it's a lot deeper. And I guess I expected something similar from what you're saying, in the vacuum cleaning industry. Okay, so now you're talking about the physical mechanism of it itself. Now let's go into the cyber side of things.
Sure. So that starts on the robot itself. So this, of course, they're Wi-Fi connected. Okay. The sensors on the robot, so I might take a sec to talk a little bit more about how the robot builds these maps of the home. So the robot has a variety of sensors on it, but one of the core sensors that we use is actually a camera. So we have a low resolution camera that's on the robot, and we use that camera with embedded processing to visually recognize different places around the home. So it's recognizing, very small, discrete kind of visual features. It's not recognizing, oh, that's the couch.
Sure.
It's recognizing just very small differences in
geometries and
kind of in geometries and more it's in lighting changes, like discrete boundaries between a dark and a bright area, for example, within a small patch of the visual field. And we're recognizing many of those, dozens, hundreds of those types of visual features, we call them. And we use kind of that constellation of visual features to re-recognize places. So when it sees the same patterns of light and dark, in effect, in a given scene, it knows it's been there before. And that's how we continuously are kind of building this map of all these visual features. And then once you go back to somewhere you've already been, you know where you are with respect to where you were in the past. So that's what enables you to build up this continuous track of where the robot is in the home. Combine that with, when the robot encounters an obstacle or a wall, the bumper gets triggered, or one of our IR sensors that detects an object gets triggered, you can kind of mark a wall in a map. That starts to allow you to build up this 2D blueprint of the home that we were talking about. But computer vision is really at the core of it. And we have many years of work that was embedding that computer vision based mapping approach into the embedded processor on board the Roomba. So that's a kind of a core innovation that we've been able to bring to market. Then when
just to dig in there a little bit further, Chris, so you've been talking about these light maps, so to speak, for the home. Now, are you taking that data and trying to make sense of all the homes in a way that, taking not just the data from a single home, but taking it from, the 10,000 homes and then trying to use that information in a way to make the product better?
That's absolutely the direction we're going. So when you think about the install base that we talked about, when all of this type of information about the robot's performance is going to the cloud, that opens the door to allow us to do data analytics, machine learning approaches that can be fed back down to each individual robot to make it better. So you can imagine this aggregated anonymous data.
A general intelligence, so to speak, as opposed to a specific, to a local intelligence.
Yeah, which can help with navigation strategies around the home, improving those over time.
When it initially encounters the home, for example, a new home, something like that.
Yeah, being able to make sense of it is I think going to be a key for us as we go forward. You can imagine, taking a look at what does of any given home, what does the physical layout look like? And being able to use that to predict where the dirt's going to be based on a history of homes, that you can start to infer essentially traffic patterns that will enable that robot to be much more targeted in the way it goes about its job.
Yeah, and navigating around particular types of geometries or navigating around particular features, just having that historic experience, so to speak, I think would generally help. Now, this would entail, like you were implying, or you explicitly said, that you would have to take it up to some data store outside of the home. Is this something that you're doing now? You have a Wi-Fi, so you got plenty of bandwidth. Are you transmitting data now to the cloud, or is it still all pretty much local?
So we are, as I mentioned, we're now sending the resulting 2D maps of the home up to the cloud, which is being provided to the consumer so they can get a solid understanding of what their robot is doing for them, the extent of its cleaning and so on. So that 2D blueprint is and the kind of associated information, what I might call the dirt map, right? Where the dirt events happened and so on, the runtime, those types of things. Those are now going to the cloud and being provided to the consumer. So to give you an idea of that, so that feature launched about a week and a half ago, just under 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
In that intervening week and a half, we have well over 1 million home maps that have gone up to the cloud and back down to consumers. So in a period of just over a week and a half or so, that's 1 million homes that have been mapped through this process. So today, we're very cautious about, of course, using that data to provide value back to the consumer. And all of this is with their understanding and consent when we do this. So we're taking it one step at a time. And that's kind of the first way that you're seeing that data go to the cloud. We're cleaning up the map. So we have some approaches that allow us to, in effect, provide a more visually understandable or pleasing map that can be post-processed in the cloud to be provided to the consumer. So that's already kind of an early workflow that is taking data from the robot, crunching on it a bit in the cloud, and then providing that to the consumer for them to see what their robot was up to.
Now, a key piece of technology that's pretty much a best practice for a lot of reasons is the over-the-air update mechanism that you're mentioning.
Absolutely.
You could update the firmware. Now, you also touched on indirectly privacy. So what is your mechanism to get this consent? I guess you have, is it through a mobile app? I mean, how are you getting, because this is useful for everyone listening, because we've had a few episodes even with the FTC or with the FCC and other legal experts on this, and sometimes providing that interface is kind of challenging. So how are you providing that interface to get that consent to upload these 1.5 million home maps?
Like you said, it's through a mobile app. So the consumer, as a standard practice, uses a mobile app to pair with their connected device and help get it up onto the network, get it set up, and so on. So part of that workflow is that. Yep. And then, it's through the mobile app that the maps are seen. So without that mobile app experience, the robot is not connected to the cloud. So, that's a core part of that setup. The consumer can do a direct in-home Wi-Fi connection, and they can still make use of their robot and so on. So there
so
still
they
is
could prevent
that
it from going up to the cloud if they have some, I guess, concerns and still get some level of functionality.
Correct. Yep. So there still can be that connected interface to the robot direct from the phone through the local Wi-Fi to the robot without ever leaving the home. When it comes to, you mentioned privacy. So just to tell you a bit about how we think about it, as I hope has been clear when we've been talking through this, we take the fact that we have this data, we take privacy and security very seriously. So we want to do all of these things with the consent of the consumer as we're looking at new directions about how that data could be used within the connected home. Okay. That value will be, enabled through with the consent of the consumer. When it comes to, security, that spans everything from the way we've thought about and designed the robot itself, the electrical architecture on the robot itself, on that hardware, had security in mind, has security in mind. I mentioned we use AWS as our backend provider for the connected product. That that selection of a vendor also came with security in mind. We wanted to make sure we had a partner that could really help us with the security aspects of the product, that had a cloud infrastructure that we could really rely on to help us as we approach that security question. So, from all the way through to software design and so on, how we're using encryption and all of these things is a core part of how we think about designing the product both with privacy and security in mind. So it's something that we're I guess you could say, taking a cautious one step at a time as we are pushing more into this connected ecosystem domain of our products.
Yeah, no, it's important lesson for everybody listening, is to take it one step at a time, is to be very explicit, and to have an exchange in value. And I think you've implied that, with the consumer in exchange for their data, and then also very clearly explain, what's going to be done with the data, how long you're going to have the data, who accesses the data, and the rest of that. So so it sounds like with the OTA mechanism, with your focus on, with the interface to the customer, your focus on privacy, and we can dig into security as well, you do have a framework anyway for what I was asking about earlier, is sending other data up to the cloud. So right now you've mentioned the mapping. I guess you've paved the way to be able to pull pretty much. You have a recipe for, I guess, to use a different way of saying, you've got a recipe for pulling up all the other data Now you just need to figure out what to do with it, I guess.
Yeah, that's those are the questions. Is how do we built kind of an infrastructure or the recipe, as you say, that allow us to start this in a way that's helping the consumer see what the robot's doing. But using that same infrastructure, it opens a door to other types of partnerships around the home that hopefully can allow consumers to see even more benefits from their robot and the data that they're maintaining about their home. So.
Yeah. No, and as per what we were talking about earlier. So, okay, so we've talked about the physical object. We have the sensor array. You've talked about the sensors a little bit. You've told us that it connects up through Wi-Fi. From Wi-Fi, you're hitting up to the AWS cloud. We've spoken a little bit about your back-end analytics, although not much. That's a plan. Are there any technical components, I guess, from a broad stroke point of view that we're missing here?
No, I think that covers it. Robotics is an exciting space, but it's challenging. You have the electrical, mechanical, consumer product in a home that's moving throughout. You've got the software on the embedded side on the robot. You've got cloud infrastructure, mobile apps. We kind of have to hit it all.
Yeah. Well, you're describing an IoT product. So one area that we haven't talked about very much is the local software, and I think it'll be the last one we'll talk about from a technology point of view, and that is artificial intelligence. To what extent are you using AI on the ground? And this opens up a lot of questions, but maybe we can just give me an understanding of the AI. I mean, I guess you've sort of said it to a certain extent, but to what extent are you using AI now, and where do you see it going?
I mean, I see it being an important part of where the products, how they're being developed in the future. We have some internal initiatives that are continuing to explore how we can use AI, machine learning, deep learning, these types of things to continue to improve the product. Today, going back to this visual mapping capability, this visual navigation solution, that in effect is a practical implementation of a core AI capability that has been in academic labs for a decade or more. You're seeing self-driving going all the way back to the beginning. You're seeing self-driving car, autonomous driving companies using very similar technologies in their context. So that core part of our product is exactly an implementation of a piece of AI that's running in the product in a highly embedded and very constrained environment, which makes it very technically difficult to do. That we're of course very proud of, and it's a differentiating capability for our product. So at a core, that's where we're using AI today. We're certainly looking at using it in other places in the future to help the robot be more effective in its operations in the home. Well,
then I guess we'll where I want to go with this, and we'll end it with this, is Dolores and Westworld. So. So what I've heard, in fact, is that there is this emotional attachment, that happens between the owner and the Roomba. And I've heard it, to the extent where if it breaks, they won't even throw out the Roomba. They'll stick it in the garage, right? And so, there is the AI, and I know it's about the maps, and that's huge. But there is also the AI in terms of interfacing with the occupants in the home, and all the ethical issues that go around that. So I don't know. Maybe you can just close off and just talking to a little bit about this emotional attachment that I've heard about, and and I guess then I can maybe probe you a little bit on the ethical issues, but just tell our listeners a bit of your experience there.
I mean, there is we have experience both in, consumer products like Roomba, as well as even our defense and security products, that the folks who use those products and see them on a day in and day out, it's moving around their environment, it's doing something that they perceive as being valuable to them, do seem to form an attachment. It's not it's not for random reason that in the connected Roomba mobile app that you can name your Roomba. So people give them names.
Yep.
And that's something that was happening even before they were connected. People would name their robots and form some type of an attachment to them. So that is something that happens, and it's it's something that is certainly something that's exciting to see in the way that I will pair that with it's when someone sees value in the product and how it's moving through their home, let's say, informing that connection is a positive sign that they are seeing that value when they do it. So it's not something that's new, but it is something that we do see when people respond to their robots.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is kind of that emotional attachment and really the value that they put into the product, because you mentioned using the voice recognition. I presume you could go the reverse direction as well and speak. And I would see that having a Roomba that has even a bit of interaction now with its occupants to grow that attachment even further, but from a business perspective, in the process of doing that, create a lot more and do a lot more, I guess, value in the product. So have you been thinking along those lines, just in terms of just putting more intelligence, I guess, emotional intelligence into the products, or is that something that's still down the road?
I'd say putting more emotional intelligence into the product is something that's more down the road. As I mentioned, we're very practical in terms of the types of products we make. So while there may be some platforms in the home that certainly would be at their core benefit from having that type of emotional intelligence, I don't know that a robotic vacuum cleaner is one of those. We'll see. Who knows? Who knows? But that's
it
not
moves
something.
Around. You see it. It's doing something for you.
Yeah. But it's not. It's something we think about for different types of concepts. But it's not something that that I would say that we're overly focused on in the near term, at least for the types of products we have out there today.
All right, Chris. Well, that's been fantastic. I appreciate it. Where can where can people find out more about you and iRobot, and in particular, and I'll put this on the show analysis notes, in particular, how would they contact the company if they wanted to work with you guys?
Sure. So, you can find me on LinkedIn. So Chris Jones, VP of Technology at iRobot, there. For the company as a whole, of course, on the web, iRobot.com, Twitter, Facebook, at iRobot, for general company updates. And I'm sure we'd love to see messages from folks there. But for companies looking for maybe to discuss potential business directions or business partnerships, I'd suggest reaching out to me on LinkedIn would be the best way.
All right. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, this was, I think, a big opening there and an eye-opener to me, I guess, to a certain extent. I guess I knew it, but to the extent that the Roomba can build this spatial map is super important and can be used in so many different ways. And I think it's just a beginning. So, Chris, thanks for the interview. I appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Likewise. Thanks for your time, Bruce.
Great job, man. That was fun. That was good.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, that was good. And this whole, obviously you can only do one thing at a time and, step by step. And it seems like iRobot is very methodical in terms of how it's moving forward. But just this business of incorporating into the bigger ecosystem is really a huge value popper. And, it just creates exponential value when you can do that. So, I mean, I do see, and specifically to home right now, it's such a battlefield for that platform. And, you guys are you're in a really good place for it. I don't know if you necessarily want to be that platform. You could, but you're certainly, I'm sure you're looking into it, but plugging into these dominating platforms would be really important, I think, for your company.
Yeah, who knows exactly how the future will play out, of course, but we do feel, as I mentioned, we have a pretty unique place in the home that can really help with some of the challenges and barriers to adoption of some of the other smart home solutions that are on the market today. So I think it'll be an exciting time in the years ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's I think it's a mental shift that maybe everyone's made already, but if you look at it, you're not a robot company, you're an IoT company. And if you think about it that way, I think it's a different perspective that opens up a lot more potential value and a lot more business. So
yep, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. I'll be in contact again. I don't have your email, but mine's Bruce at IoT-inc.com. But I'll be in contact when the episode has been produced, and then we'll market it, and hopefully we'll be in contact again. Catch you later.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. That was a really good talk with Chris Jones of iRobot Corporation. This podcast goes vertical, deep diving into different topics each week. If you prefer a more horizontal and structured approach to learning IoT business and its orbiting technologies, check out my book IoT Inc., published by McGraw-Hill, or become a certified IoT professional by completing the ICIP training and certification program. For details, just go to www.iot-inc.com. Also go to www.iot-inc.com for an analysis of this episode, links to things that were mentioned during the episode, and very importantly, the episode's PDF transcript. Just search for the name of the episode or the guest. If you're new to this podcast, subscribe. That way you'll get every week's episode delivered straight to your device. Or, if you've been listening for a while, there are 3 ways you can support the show. You can leave a rating or a review on iTunes. Just go to iot-inc.com/iTunes. It only takes 1 click to leave a rating, a little bit longer to leave a review. You can share it on social. I'm on LinkedIn, to a lesser extent on Twitter. And of course, you can support this show by buying my book, IoT Inc., or the ICIP training and certification program. It's how I pay the bills. Next week's episode is IP and IoT. It just makes business sense with Joachim Limburg of CES.se. I hope you can join me then. I'm your host, Bruce Sinclair. Thank you for listening. Until next week, may your path to IoT business be a clean one.
You have been listening to the IoT Inc. Business Show.